It's time for another journey. My name's Matt Griffith, and this time around I'm joined by former British Olympic rower Richard Hamilton. Richard, hello.
Good morning, Matt.
Now, there's so much to discover about you, Richard. It's been quite a journey, but let's start with your connection to the area, as we like to do at the start of every journey. What's brought you here? Because, as I said, you're a long way from the UK.
I was brought to Albury 8-9 years ago. A job opportunity arose up here to build a dairy farm, and that was the reason I ended up in Albury. I was down in Maffra, where I was farming down there, and an opportunity was approached to come up here and help build and establish a dairy farm just outside Cora, which I did. And that's why we ended up in Albury today.
Yeah, so you've been here almost 10 years now.
Almost 10 years. I forget, it was 2014.
What do you love about it?
I think it's on the border. I've always loved being by water. So with the weir and the river, and its proximity to the bush. You can be in a central town, and an hour away you can be out in the bush enjoying the best of both worlds. So yeah, I love the centrality, and you're close to Melbourne, close to Sydney. Family come and visit from overseas, they can arrive and get a plane and be here relatively quickly. So it's everything I enjoy. All
right, but let's go back to when you were younger, because I'm fascinated by your journey, and we'll get to your Olympic experiences, of course, as well. But what was your childhood like, and what made you kind of gravitate towards rowing?
I had a great childhood. I was at boarding school from the age of 8, which probably surprised most people. And then from the age of 13 to 18, I went to a college called Pangbourne College, which is actually the school my father went to. And it was a military college. So back in the day, you went there with the view of joining the Navy. But when I went there, obviously that wasn't the case. But we still had all the naval uniforms, still had the parades. And so for 5 years, it was the best 5 years of my life. It was running around, playing soldiers with a bit of education and the freedom to play sport. And that's where I started to row.
Yeah, and obviously you excelled at it. Were you always very good at it, or how hard did you have to work?
No, I sort of fell into it. So I was 6'4" at 12, 13 years old. Played rugby in the winter, and in the UK you do 3 sports. So you play rugby, and then you can either row for 2 terms or hockey and athletics. So I just went rugby and rowed for 2 terms. And after the first year, my coach, and was to be my tutor for the rest of my time at school, said, a guy's gone sick, we're putting you in a boat with another guy, and you're going to the junior rowing trials, so the British junior team rowing trials. And on the way up to Peterborough, where the trials were being held, I remember asking him and saying, what do I do? And he just said, keep pulling hard until someone tells you to stop. And I pretty much haven't stopped doing that to this day. I went up there and I just raced everyone that they put against me, because you get into boats of 4, so 2 boats with 4 people in it race each other, and they swap you over so they can see who's making the boat go fast or slow. And at that, I ended up in the British 8 in 1990, and we ended up with a silver medal, second behind the East Germans. It was the last time the East Germans actually competed before they unified as Germany. So that was awesome to race against East Germany. Not many people can now say that they actually raced. So I had a silver medal that year, and it was that year in Aiguebelette in France that I get goosebumps now, standing on the medal podium, and we had the silver medal put around our neck, and I looked to my left and saw the Germans getting the gold and thought, I want one of those.
Yeah.
And 12 months later, that happened.
Yeah. Talk me through that.
So I went back to school, obviously pretty high that we'd won a silver medal. That was pretty ecstatic. But I think it was the fact that I often work in my life on memory. So you see something and then you go, okay, I want that. How am I now going to achieve that? And so I basically went back and just trained harder.
Yes. Yeah. What did you love about it? What did you love about the training, the competing?
I used to have a globe in my room, and I used to put it under a chair, and every night I used to stand on that chair for a minute and visualize myself being the best in the world for one day of my life. And that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to have a crack at being the best in the world for one day of my life.
Yeah.
And that's what I wanted to do. So I went all out to do that. And, it's the old adage. Everyone goes, well, I go running on Christmas Day because no one else is running on Christmas Day. And then you go, well, maybe other people are running on Christmas Day, so I'll put a rucksack on my back and fill it with rocks, because they're not going to be doing that.
Yes.
And then you go, well, I'm now going to run up a bloody great big hill with a rucksack full of rocks. So you're constantly competing against yourself, because that's what I wanted. And funnily enough, that following year, we got to the final. It was in Spain, in Banyoles, and it was a precursor for the 1992 Olympic Games. So the juniors would trial out the Olympic course. And we beat the Aussies by 0.29 of a second.
Damn you.
Which isn't a lot, but I remember I remember in the final taking the first couple of strokes, and it's like an out of body experience. You sort of sit there and remember, what am I doing here, and why? Like, you know, you suddenly made a world championship final.
Yes.
And you hear the race, Richard, and you sort of get back in the boat, and we raced, and it was a really, really good race. It's a tough race because there's not a lot, 0.29 of seconds, not much, but it was fantastic. And we waited for the photo finish to come up, and bang, there we were, world champion, junior world champion, and it was an incredible moment. So, that was pretty special, and I guess that set me on my course to this whole concept of goal setting and achieving stuff, setting out, finding something you want to do, whether it be a dream or a belief. And then how do I go and achieve that?
Yeah.
Which has been pretty powerful.
We're going to talk much more about that mental aspect and what that has done for your journey, because it's taken you down some very interesting roads. But before we get to that, I do want to touch on the 96 Olympics. So you were in the men's 8 event.
Correct.
How did it go? And what are
we
your
finished 8th
experiences?
that year. But the margin that we finished behind, we potentially could have been on for a bronze, 4th or bronze in the final. Obviously only 6 boats can make the final. So look, it was very disappointing at the time, but with hindsight and reflection, I was very focused on, again, after going back to the school, I remember at 16, 17 asking the same tutor, you know, do you think I've got the ability to go to the Olympics? And he said yes. And I suffered an injury in the September, October prior to the Olympics the following year, which was a knee injury, and I was out. And I actually flew myself out to a training camp just to be there in presence when the guys were training, so they still saw me. And I wasn't forgotten, as it were. But a lot of the guys that I rode with that year went on to win Olympic gold in 2000 for the British 8. And a lot of people have often asked, oh, do you regret? Because I had to swap sides at some point. There's no regrets that I didn't win Olympic gold, because I was who I was at that time. I was very physical. I was very robust. I was very angry. You know, I'm just going to pull harder. And the guys that had to get past me had to have all of that, but they also had to have a technical ability as well. And when I look back at life and go, well, that's who I am. I'm very driven. I'm very determined. I'll put the hard yards in, but that wasn't who I was to go and get, you know, I wasn't the technical rower. I was always the angry, aggressive, you know, I'm sure there's footy players that people can associate with that aren't the technical guys, but they just put the grunt in day out. And that's who I was. So I have no regrets. I'm an Olympian. You can't take that away. It was a fantastic experience, and I made lots of friends from the whole, you know, sporting journey through. So and to, you know, to go and see Muhammad Ali in the flesh, to experience whole Olympic Games is absolutely phenomenal. Yeah.
So essentially, someone replaced you.
Yeah. So I forget how many went on, but you know, 3 or 4 guys actually changed in the team and went on for 2000. But it was very much of a mindset of, you know, they did their thing. I made some decisions at the time that weren't the wrong decisions. They were just different decisions, and we kept training in different venues, and you know, life pans out as it does. But then there were a whole heap of opportunities that came out from that.
Would it be fair to say that for some people, the fact that you went to the Olympics prior to an Olympics where you actually won gold, did you say in 2000?
The British 8 did, yeah.
Yeah, that would actually damage them for their lives, you know, because it's something they've missed out on and you've driven. How have you handled that, or has
they had to climb over me to get that? And so I look at it and go, I set the standard so high, they then had to go above that standard to then go on and get the gold. And look, I'm not hiding behind. I didn't have the technical skills. That's not who I am. Even today, I'm big picture stuff. I'm not technical with computers or technical with the minute. I'll employ people that are good at that stuff. I have the big picture, the drive, the determination to push through the obstacles to get there. So I was only being true to who I really was. So I don't feel, a lot of them are good friends, very good friends of mine. And there's never been any regret or I should have been in that boat, etc.
So once you've reached the peak, which obviously the Olympics is, you're still young, as most people are who go to the Olympics and have reached that pinnacle. Did you have that moment where you went, okay, what now? It's the year, 98 or
so I trained whilst
you.
I was rowing, I trained as a phys ed teacher, so I was a qualified PE teacher. So I always knew there was going to be a coaching, training opportunity after that. And if you go back to when you say some people look at missing out on the Olympics as being a non-success story, well, in 2003, I actually coached 9 young men to become world champions.
Yeah.
In the same event, I'd won a silver medal at the World Championships in 1990. So I would argue that by not being an Olympic gold medalist, it actually made me a better coach, because I actually had to understand a lot more about the intricacies of how to make a boat go fast.
Yes. Yeah.
Whereas if you're naturally talented at something, it's often the people who are naturally talented don't go on and make the best coaches because they couldn't tell you how they do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Whereas I had all the aggression and the power and the determination. Then I had to go away and actually work out for myself how you actually make a boat go fast. And then in 2003, sat down with 9 young men and said, right, let's go to the Junior World Championships and win gold medal. And I think to this day, I'm probably only one who's actually won a medal and coached a gold medal.
Yeah.
And won a junior gold medal. So my reward is taking 9 young men who are now walking around with their own families today, recounting back to their children when they became world champion.
Yeah.
So to me, that's more valuable than anything, because you've had an impact on 9 people's lives. You've turned them from, it was the lowest ranked boat. No one expected it to win gold. And I took them, and we were the only boat to win a gold medal that year for the British rowing team.
Yeah. Wow, that must be an amazing.
And that was pretty fantastic. And we had all sorts of odds. The crew sank in the first heat because it was in Athens, so it was a precursor of the 2004 Olympic Games. The boat sank in the heat. The race got shortened to 1,000 meters. So there was a whole heap of what ifs were going on, playing out in front of us. We had a guy go sick, so it wasn't an easy route. We had to change the race plan. There was a whole level of obstacles that kept getting thrown at us on a daily basis, and we still walked away with the gold medal. So that for me overrides becoming an Olympian.
Yeah. Wow, that's really interesting. So that takes us up to the early 2000s, and you dabbling in coaching. What then? What happened after
2004, I coached another crew to a silver medal at the Under-23 World Championships. That was a silver medal. And then I had my youngest, 2004, Fergus was 4, and I was getting a bit disillusioned with the UK and living in a concrete jungle, and knew what I wanted for my kids to grow up, and just came home one day and said, let's go and have a look at New Zealand. Never been there. I'd been to Australia in a gap year. I'd worked out here for a couple of years. And got on a plane, packed everything up, moved the family to New Zealand as Director of Sport at Tauranga Boys High School, which is in the Bay of Plenty. And that's where it changed. We bought 5 acres 40 minutes out of town, surrounded by dairy farmers, and just went, this is a cool lifestyle. They all had boats and guns, and every weekend was off, and they were living the dream as far as I could see. And that's where I decided to sort of go. I'd always interested in farming from a young age, but there was no avenue in the UK to go and do it.
Yeah, and no history of farming in your family?
Nothing. But I loved it. It was very replicable to rowing. So with rowing, you're doing the same stroke, every day, hour on hour. In farming, in dairy farming, you're just milking cows every day. There's timing's important. You turn up to training on time. The cows have got to be turned up to milk time. So I view cows as athletes. I don't have 1,000 cows. I have 1,000 athletes. And as much as you look at your athletes in the footy teams, they have to be fed properly. They've got physios, they've got managers, they've got nutritionists, they've got psychologists, they've got all that support network behind them, so they can go out and compete once a week. These cows are competing every day. The energy they put out on a daily basis is the equivalent of human running a marathon every day.
Wow.
So when you actually look at cows as athletes and feed them accordingly to get them, their gold medals is production. So the volume of milk they produce every day is the equivalent to winning cricket games. It's equivalent to winning the gold medal.
I've never heard it.
So when you actually focus on them
like
as
that.
athletes, it changes everything. Why are they standing out in the paddock with no shade and no water? Why are you not feeding them properly? Why are you expecting them to deliver large volumes of milk without... You wouldn't expect your footy team to go and win a premiership if you didn't feed them. And you took away the physios, nutritionists, all the support network. Everyone would be up in arms. There'd be riots on the streets. And yet people sometimes don't look at animals in the same view. So it was a really easy shift. It went from one performance base of sport into a performance base of farming.
Yeah, that's fascinating, because I was looking at broadly at your life and your journey, and it was like there's kind of 3 distinct things there. There's the rowing, and then there's farming, which doesn't seem to have a link, but now you've linked it beautifully. And then there's mentoring, coaching,
the other thing that links
teaching.
it, and a lot of people don't realise it, is that when you're an athlete or a coach of athletes, what you educate and you train those athletes to do is to control the controllables. So you can't control the other team. You can't control what they train. You can't control the gyms they train in. You can't control the coaches they have. You can't control the weather you play in. All you can control is what you do as an athlete on a daily basis. If you then take that mindset into farming, you can't control the weather.
Yep.
We can't control the milk price. We can't control commodity prices. There's a lot that we can't control. So you take the same mentality and bring back, okay, what can you control? Well, you can control your own business. You can control how you build your business. Do you make it drought proof? Do you make it resilient? Do you make it to be able to combat? How do you manage commodity prices? So rather than sitting there and, worrying about all that stuff, you control what you can control.
Yes.
Same as if you're in a race or if you're in a footy game. The coach can't come on in a rowing race at 1,000 metres and tell you what to do. It's not like a footy game. You can come on at half time, quarter time and say you need to change it. You can't. So rowing creates these people that are mentally tough, they're resilient, they're able to make decisions under pressure. And all I've done is go, right, well, we'll just bring the same mentality into farming, but every day's a race. And control what I can control.
Yep.
And don't worry about what I can't control. And when you do that, you actually find that you end up with a really resilient business.
Yeah. And I want to get back to farming in a second, but you've just beautifully tied in that third part, which was the mentoring, coaching mindset. Because obviously that has played a big part in everything that you do. And tell me a little, before we go back to farming, tell me a little about how you've become involved in that side of the journey.
So I've always been, people talk about glass half full, half empty, and I've always taken the view, well, I want to be in the position where I'm actually pouring the water into the glass. So you're actually in control of how much water's in it, which is, again, it's a completely different mindset. But if you go right back, when I was junior, I'd just come back from Australia and started training on the senior team, and Jürgen, the chief coach, came to me and said, Richard, would you like to come as a spare pair for the team? And I replied to him, I'll come as a doctor, which is significant because it was like, if you're presented with an opportunity, take it, because you never know when the next one's going to come. Even if it's not, well, I don't want to go as a spare, I want to be in the medal-winning boat. No, I just want to be on the team to start with. And so that comes into coaching. It's like when I coached the 9 young guys, I said, right, if I see one of you, I see 9 of you. We're in an 8 together, so why are we all walking around the hotel individually? Why are we turning up for breakfast as different people? Why aren't we, So that developed over time, and then I have always had a passion for teaching underprivileged kids. So when I taught at Windsor Boys School in the UK for a short period of time, I don't know how it happened, but I always had this belief that there are enough good teachers to teach the good kids. It was the ones that were breaking glass, getting in trouble with the police that I gravitated to. We had an affinity, and that's hence my involvement now with Boys to the Bush. I'm their ambassador of Boys to the Bush, and we've had kids come out on the farm and we've mentored them because I relate to them. Why? Couldn't tell you, but I do. And I love the fact that you can pick this guy up and take him from here and put him there, and he'll turn around and go, I never knew I could do that. And I do it with some of my staff today. Some of the staff I've got working for me now wouldn't think they could be in the position they are today 6 months ago.
Yeah.
Because I believe in everyone. I believe everyone has the ability to improve themselves and do better. And it's because I have a saying, everyone's a world champion in something, but no one's ever told them that. And it doesn't necessarily mean you're a world champion. The world champion isn't winning a gold medal. It could be, you've become the manager of your local supermarket. That's your world champion moment, because 2 years ago you thought you were never going to make it. It could be getting into your favorite university that you thought was impossible. It could be becoming world champion in something. But it's having it when someone comes up to you and says, you're doing a great job, I think you're going to be able to do that. How good do you feel? But no one recognizes people like that. They're too tied up in their own world and their own worries, and they forget what is the journey that person that I'm talking to is currently on in their life. If staff are late, I don't bollock them. I go, why are you late? Or my mum had a hemorrhage last night. Okay, cool. It's understanding why people talk to people, listen to people. And it's incredibly powerful. And people then start believing in what you say. And you go, you can. And it's important to make people, like with the staff, and like physically do something today. Lift that ton of bricks from there to there. So you've actually done something tangible that they go home and go, I've actually done that. Because that lifting the ton of bricks from there to there then goes to, well, I've actually managed the milking shed on my own this morning. Good job. And then they go home a little bit higher. And then the next day they go, I have a story I tell to the people. I had a guy from Boys to the Bush working for us, and I said to him, do you understand that when the milk truck comes down the tanker, comes to pick the milk up, he's only got a job because of you. You know, the people who work at McDonald's, they've only got a job because of you. You know, the people who work in Coles and sell the cheese and the yogurts, they've only got a job of you. The people who work in the pharmacies, they've only got a job because of you. And he goes, what do you mean? I said, well, it all has dairy products. And if you weren't milking cows, they wouldn't have products to sell. They wouldn't have a job. Anyway, he had the weekend off and he came back on the Monday and just went into the dairy and was having a yak to him and said, "How was your weekend?" He goes, "Oh, it was great." I said, "Why?" He goes, "Because I went around town telling everyone they've only got a job because of me." But what it does is it actually puts value on what these people are doing, these young guys are doing, and so often they're not valued enough. And then all of a sudden, where they fit into their little community worked. They understand it's not just you're dumb, you're milking cows because you're thick, which is what 9 times the people say at school, or you're dumb, go farming. These people are actually suddenly realizing how important they are in the world, and it inspires them, and they want my job. They want to move up the ladder. They want to get better, and that's so important. Like I always say to people, when I die, I'm not going to be judged, or I don't want to be judged on millions in the bank or flash houses. If I have 20,000 people turn up my funeral and go, "That bloke changed my life," done. Tick the box. Happy.
Yeah.
That's what drives me.
That's what Boys to the Bush is really all about. For those that don't know, it's a local organisation, and it targets the boys who are at risk, really, of letting their lives escape them.
Well, they're born into an environment they've got no control over, and as a result, they're doing a lot of things that society doesn't accept. That's generally not their fault. And so we just provide a pathway through camps and mentoring to reintegrate them back into society, to have a meaningful life in society. And there is a number of boys who have been on the program who are now employed either through the Boys to the Bush organisation or in different industries throughout Australia. So it's great. It's great.
It's brilliant. And the No Matter How Strong the Headwind initiative is something that you've also
so I founded
initiated.
that just a little over 6 months ago, and it came about from working through my life, really, sitting here and drawing on all the experiences I've got and putting together a business which actually goes out and inspires people to be the better version of themselves, to talk about leadership, to understand what is leadership. And Simon Sinek, who I listen to a lot, explains it very well. And he says, leadership is about looking after those that are around you. It's not about standing from the top of the mountain saying how great I am, look at everyone working for me. And I spend my whole day ensuring that all my staff have the right equipment, the right tools to do their job, and supporting them to do their job.
Yep.
And making them a better version of themselves. And I know you asked for a quote, and the quote I use, which links in nicely with this, is a guy, and forgive me if I don't pronounce it correctly, but it's Lao Tzu, I think, which is Chinese, Laotzzu. And he says, "A leader is best when people barely know he exists. When his work is done, his aim fulfilled, they will say, 'We did it ourselves.'" And that's very much what I'm about. I want to build a big agricultural company. I want to have a legacy that secures the Patton family farm for another 3 generations, 5 generations in the valley, but not because I did it, but because I inspired a whole heap of other people to do it.
Yeah.
And there's a big difference, mindset,
All right.
when you do that.
Before we dig into your psyche a little bit more, I just want to follow the chronology a little bit. So you're in New Zealand and you started farming.
So I moved to New Zealand in 2004.
And then how long were you there?
Farming in 2006.
Yep.
And then left New Zealand in 2011 and been in Australia ever since.
Yep. And you settled in the Mitta Valley?
Now settled in the Mitta. So it took me 10 years to find. When I started farming, they have what they call New Zealand share farming. So you own the cows, the owner owns the land, and then you split the milk check. And that was all good. But I realised as I was taking that farming journey that my skill set, which is basically people management and management, that wasn't testing me enough. So I wanted a big operation. So that's where the Pattons were asking for a farm manager back in 2015, 16. And I applied for the job not knowing who they were or how big the business was going to get. And as it turns out, they'd gone through a succession planning phase, decided what they want to do, and it was like the aligning of the planets. The 3 brothers and I who've set up Mitta Agricultural Company with Mac and Pat, the parents of the 3 boys, could be mistaken as being my biological brothers. Like, we are so alike, it was an aligning of the planets to build what's come forwards. And I think above everything I've done in my life so far, the fact that this farm has been in the family for 5 generations, was it 10 years ago, was on the market. There was a potential to sell it, but we've actually rescued it. We've built the business back. We've now employed all of Mac and Pat Patton's family. All their children are employed in some shape or form in the business. And Mac spent his whole life developing that as a dairy farm, wishing that his kids would. So his dreams come true. But not only that, we've actually secured some history in the local Mitta Valley. Family that's been there since day dot. that could have been sold to an investor from Melbourne, and that history goes. And so for me, it's a proud moment that you've actually got a family, you've succeeded in a succession plan, you've grown a business over the last 7 or 8 years, and it's now continuing to grow for the next generation and the next generation and the next generation.
Yeah.
And people talk, again, this is from Simon Sinek, who I listen to, but he talks about a finite goal or an infinite goal. And some people set up a business to go, well, I want to make $10 million in 10 years. Done. Whereas we're setting up a business that not only wants to make money, but is there for the next generation and the next generation and the next generation. And that has a very different mindset than how you set things up.
Yeah.
It's not a short go and grab it. It's because there's history. There's a family farmhouse there that's got covered in history and steeped with history. There's hills that are steeped in history, and we'll lose it all.
Yeah, yeah. Has it lived up to your expectations, the farming life? Because you said, there was no history of it in your family.
Oh, it's the ultimate boys' job. Outside, tractors, chainsaws, mud, all weather. And that's what I enjoy. I mean, I always used to joke, the only time you get me behind a desk is I've got a balaclava and a shotgun and I'm doing the bank over.
Or in court.
Afterwards when I get busted. But for me, it's, and I guess that's where I'm now moving to in the business. I'm moving further and further up. So a lot more of it is HR and rosters and planning and budgeting, but it's still good to get back out on the tools and drive tractors and milk the odd cow. So it's a lifestyle, it's a privilege. Farming for me is a privilege. You go to the Mitta Valley at Easter, there are hundreds of people come up there. I work there. Every day I get up and the valley is a different painting.
It's God's country.
It is. And so it's a privilege to farm. And I just bring, and I talk about it, I was speaking about it yesterday to someone, it's a transference of skills. It's a business. Rowing was a business. High performance sports a business, and you just take the same skill set from sport into farming.
Yeah, yeah.
And I've often joked, one day I'll write a book, The Sporting Psychology of a Dairy Cow.
Yeah.
Because they are athletes, and they're incredible athletes, and what they do is I love them. I love the cows, and I love grass. I love simple systems. So for me, I love it.
Yeah.
It's great.
Are cows, just as an aside, before we jump into your psyche a little bit more, how smart are cows?
Very smart. Very smart.
Do we underappreciate?
Absolutely. So cows love routine. So if I milk 1,000 cows, right? As they come onto the rotary, which is a big platform, merry-go-round, 50 cows can get milked at once. The same 50 cows will be in the first 50, and the last 50 will always be in the last 50, unless one's crook and it'll be out the back. So it's crook because it's not there. They will wait for their mates. If you watch cows, like boring as I am, I go out 6 cans of VB, sit in the paddock at night, and the cows' natural behaviour is for the cows to come around you. And if you watch cows, they will get off the rotary and they'll wait for their mate to come off the platform.
Yeah.
They'll each give each other a bit of a lick and a scratch, and they'll walk off down to the grass.
They know the routine.
They know the routine. They know when they're hungry. They know when they're... You just watch cows, they'll tell you the story. They're most incredible animals because they produce up to 40 to 50 litres of milk a day. They get in calf, they walk, they ruminate, they go backwards and forwards from the dairy every day. I mean, the humans would struggle to do what they do.
Yeah.
100%. And so that's why you look at it from an energy. You are asking a living, breathing animal to do X, as in produce milk. You have to provide it the energy to do that, or it won't. And that's when people run into trouble. They don't milk them properly, they don't understand them properly, they don't understand how cows think and systems. Cows take up to 35,000 bites a day.
Crikey.
They'll drink up to 200 litres of water a day. They're incredible animals when they do. And they're turning, like we feed almond hull husks. So the almond nuts, the husks are there, we feed them that. And you can feed cows pretty much anything you want. And they take a lot of waste products that would be burnt or thrown in the ocean. They convert it into milk. So you take a waste product and you're turning it into a primary product.
Yeah.
And if you actually go down and look into detail at what cows produce, it's not only milk, it's medicines, it's in curtains, it's in so much cosmetics, it would scare you. It's in the plastic of capsules for... It's quite incredible that what cows are capable of producing for us as humans.
Yeah. All right, I'm going to do a bit of a dive into your psyche now.
Go for it.
Are you ready? What do you consider? You've had the 3 distinct kind of elements. You've had rowing, mentoring, coaching, and the farming life. What do you consider to be your biggest achievement?
Apart from having 3 healthy and successful children, which obviously any father's going to put them up there as his number one. If I'm really honest, I actually think it is bringing the Patton family together in business and succeeding.
Yeah.
Because so often today you can pick up the Weekly Times, you can read in the news, you can listen to people talk. They are struggling to keep the family farms together. One guy's worked on it all his life, he thinks he's going to inherit it, and then he doesn't, then dad's done nothing about it, he then dies, and there's a big blue, and then the family farm gets sold. And credit to the Mac and Patton and their family. And you know, I've often joked that I often put my United Nations blue hat on, wake up and go and deal with them.
Yeah, I see what you mean.
But that's part of it, having tough conversations with all of them. But fair play to them all. We've actually all come through 8 years of some incredible tough times, drought, COVID.
Yeah. And
we're still here, and we're still growing, and we're still, you know, we now employ 20 people. That's 20 families that rely on us in the Mitta Valley, which is huge. It's not a small operation. So
what was COVID?
COVID was
like
really
for you
interesting.
guys?
COVID was really interesting. So on the surface, we were primary producers, so we didn't have to stop working. When I reflect on COVID, the thing that comes to mind is when things are made legal, doesn't mean they're morally correct. And I experienced that firsthand. And this isn't about whether you're a vax or anti-vaxxer, whether you agree with what was said or not. The fact of the question was there was no consultation done by the government and agriculture. I have 1,000 cows that need to be milked every day from an animal welfare point of view.
Yeah.
I had staff that woke up one day being told, if you are not going to get vaccinated, you lose your job. And if you go back to my leadership role, which is my job is to look after everyone that I employ. So I've got staff coming to me going, I don't want to lose my job, but I don't want to get vaccinated. I don't understand it. I don't know. So I was in this dilemma, which was, well, legally, the government's telling me I've got to fire you because you're not getting vaccinated.
Yeah.
On the other hand, I sat there and went, well, you can do your job 50 metres apart. I have an animal welfare issue that I have to deal with, unless I was going to take 1,000 cows to Melbourne and someone's going to milk them for me. So I made the sensible decision, said, okay, no one's going to lose their job. We will follow the guidelines, like you all live near or on the farm, so effectively working from home. We have an animal welfare issue that has to be addressed. We kept the minimum distance massively by 10, 20 metres, because cups on, cups off is separated by 30 metres, so you can work independently. You're living. We put the same households on, rostered together. So we did everything that I made the decision fitted the guidelines. And I said, it's not my choice. You have to go and decide what you want to do, which legally was wrong at the time. But morally, for me, was the right decision. I don't stand there and tell people they're breaking the speed limit coming to work. They make a choice whether they want to break the speed limit or not, and it's not my job to prosecute them.
Yeah. It put us all in.
That was the view I took, and I'm responsible for those 20 families.
Yeah.
I said, okay, no one's going to lose their job. And at the end of the day, by gently guiding them through those pretty heavy days, we had a higher vaccination rate. I think we were 100% at the end.
Yeah.
But there was a point there where you can't just I just can't shut a dairy farm down. You can shut a clothes shop, and it was tough for them, but the clothes don't need to do anything.
Of course.
And you had backlogs and all of that. So I'm not saying we did it any harder than anyone else, but it was the fact that we were basically, and I had other farmers phone me up and said, "What are you doing?" And I said, "Well, this is what I'm doing." And I was prepared to go to court over it. I stepped to the board and said, "This is the decision I'm making. I'm prepared to go to court if we have to go to court." But we ended up all vaccinated. The cows kept being milked. The business kept running through. But that's where it's that interesting thing where often, sometimes in life, there will be things that are legal, but they will challenge your morals as to whether you actually agree with them or not. And that's where I believe true leadership comes through, because at the end of the day, my job as their leader is to look after them.
Yes.
It's not to go, you're all fired because the government's telling me, without actually giving it significant thought. So for me, it was a really interesting period in my own self-reflection as a leader, what I was prepared and not prepared to do, but also to come out the other side with the same staff, and everyone's carried on with their lives and protected them from loss of income, etc. So
yeah,
it was pretty powerful.
That's amazing. The next 5 to 10 years, I mean, it sounds to me like you're somebody that always likes to have a challenge, something to work towards. You don't like to rest on your laurels. So
I think it's to continue. The Mitta Agriculture Company has been set up in such a way that we have the opportunity to take on aging farmers who don't want to leave the farm but have the land. They can come to us and say, look, we'll just lease you our grass, So we can go there. So that's how the business means. So we'd like to continue expanding on that front. For me personally, I'd like to, I'm never going to be young forever as much as you think you are. So in the next 10 years, I'd like to develop no matter how strong the headwind, because I really enjoy going around and not only inspiring people, but I think what makes it more relevant is that there are a lot of what I call sort of keyboard warriors, keyboard journalists who have studied psychology, they've studied things, and they write about it, and then they go and talk to people about it, and people always feel great. Oh, that's great. But then it's really hard to then follow up with people and to actually go away and make those differences. I'm in there. I dealt with COVID. I've dealt with droughts. I've dealt with bushfires. I've dealt with not making an Olympic final. I've actually lived and breathed it. So I think I'm in actually quite a good position to sit down with people and say, I've actually had something similar, and this is how I dealt with it. This is how you can deal with it, which is very different from someone who just talks about leadership. I'm making mistakes every day. I'm learning from them. I'm reevaluating how I operate as a leader. Some days you get it right, some days you get it wrong. Leadership isn't you don't go away for a weekend not a leader and then walk out a leader. Leadership is about doing the little things every day over a significant period of time. That's what leadership is.
Yeah.
It's not a ticket, I've been on a leadership course, I'm a leader. Well, you're not a leader. Leadership is about you looking at yourself, but fundamentally coming back to, and the classic, if you use a school example, you get 5 geography teachers at school, and they've all been teaching geography, and the head of geography leaves. And they go, well, you've been here 7 years, Simon, so you're going to become the head of geography. So all of a sudden, and Simon Sinek, use Simon again, but he describes it very, very well. He says, all of a sudden, you go from being responsible for teaching geography to being responsible for those that are teaching geography. That's massive. It's massive. And so I look at it from a dairy point of view and go, everyone in the dairy industry the big thing is about staff. We can't get staff. I'm actually talking at the Murray Muster at the end of May on this, on staff and management and leadership change, because they all say, well, we can't get managers. We can't get managers. And we have staff here and we put them in a management role and they're no good and then we sack them. Well, there's a reason why that happens, because you're taking them from being responsible to milking the cows to suddenly being responsible for those people milking the cows.
Yes.
And it's a massive mindset, and they don't train them to do it. And then they put them in that role, they fail, they sack them, then stand up and go, we can't get any staff.
Yeah, classic.
So that's what I want to do, is educate people in actually how you understand people and how you put. And not everyone can manage people. That's okay. Not everyone's going to be a leader. That's okay. But actually find out where that person sits in your organization and give them the tools to do the job to the best of their ability.
Yeah.
Because when you put them into an area that they're not comfortable, because that's what you need them to do, and then they can't do it, well, you're sacking them for an invalid reason, because you put them there and they didn't have the skills to do it.
Yeah.
That's the area I want to get into. I love it.
All right. Now, before you go, we literally talk for hours, but we are running out of time. I just want a word or two on, you said you have 3 kids, and I haven't talked about your love life and how much influence your partner has. So can you talk a little bit about...
So I've got 3 children, Fergus, Hamilton, Tierney, Hamilton and Rory Hamilton. I actually got divorced in 2016, I think it was, 15, 16. So I've got a new partner, Jackie Schmidt, who's an Albury girl. So I've been with her 8 years now.
Oh, great.
Which is great. And Fergus, he got a rowing scholarship to Yale in America. So he was actually junior world champion for Australia in 2017 and won a bronze medal last year at the under-23s for Australia. So he's finishing Yale this year and then hopefully coming back. And he's very much his own young man, but I know he's in good stead to have a crack for Australia next year at the Olympic Games, brilliant. Which would be great if that came out. Tierney's, she's at Adelaide University. She's rowing for Adelaide Uni and she's doing finance.
Yeah.
And has a lovely, great boyfriend, Josh, who's up in Mackay, welder. And they come down fishing, camping on the farm all the time. And then Rory is just turned 18. He's got his own little business called Hamilton Eventing. So he basically rescues what they call OTTs, so off-the-track racehorses, and trains them up to be 3-day eventers. And that's his passion. He's a Kiwi, obviously. He was born in New Zealand, so he's proud of that, whereas the others are born in the UK.
Yep.
But his dream is to have a crack at 3-day eventing for the Olympics. So so no, they're all high achieving, as it were. But look, it's great, and you have kids to support them and love them and cherish them in the journeys that you do with them. So that's brilliant. It's great.
All right. Now, before we go, let's knock over the traditional final questions on the journey. A bit of fun. If you were able to invite 3 people to your dinner party, dead or alive, who would they be and why, Richard?
Jackie Schmidt, because she's my partner. Winston Churchill,
Yes.
because he stood for 2 years and faced down the world in his decision. And that's, we go back and talk about, making big decisions, tough decisions. Like he had to make some thousands of people's lives. And the other one, which might be interesting for Australians, is actually Sir Sidney Kidman, who was one of the biggest landowners of tract of land. So back in the 1890s, he bought up the land that went from Adelaide right up to the Territory, because he believed that he could move cattle through Australia and dodge the drought. So if he had enough land, he'd just move his cattle to where the drought wasn't.
Right.
And that's pretty much inspired what we've done, in that we just lease 5 properties. We try and keep the property so that we can sit and wait for the rain. We're not just one little block of land. It's a fascinating story. It was very, very tight. Like if you were sitting next to a fire, when it was in the day and you lit a match to lit a cigarette, you get a bollocking, like use a bit of wood out of the fire. So it's real old school, but a real gentleman and just an amazing entrepreneur. And he used to go to the UK and he'd speak to the people in the front in the horse and carriages and get them to come back and work for him in Australia. So he's fantastic.
He won't be bringing anything, obviously, because he's tight. So you'll have to provide everything for him.
That's right.
Sweet or savoury?
Savoury.
Yeah, good man. Finally, do you have any good recommendations for us, whether it's something you're reading, watching, listening to?
It's a book that I read and dip back into quite frequently, and it's written by Wayne Bennett.
Oh, yeah, coach, NRL coach.
And it's called Don't Die with the Music in You. It's incredibly powerful, and he relates. So he's obviously a very, very successful sports coach, and he takes a lot of that back to farming. And one of the quotes that there's 2 quotes that resonate for me in the books. One was, if you want to plough the field, you've got to go out and plough the field. So what I interpret that is, if you can have all the best plans in the world, you can have all the best sports strategy in the world, but you've actually got to go out and do it. Yeah. Which I think is really simple. If you want to plough the field, go out and plough the field. And his other one was, and he's talking about mateship, which I know Aussies are great at. And it stood with me. I read this book 15 years ago, but keep dipping back into it and back into it. And it talks about mateship. And he says, talking about his mates, he says, if you're wrong, I'm wrong. If you're right, I'm right. And that's pretty much what I'm like. I will get a bit emotional with it, but like for my staff, I'll stand by. Anyone comes in at them, I'll stand by them. I don't care whether they're wrong. If they're wrong, I'm wrong. Yeah. If they're right, I'm right. And I think that's a really good mindset. And if anyone wants to read it and actually just be inspired, it's a great book. Don't Die with the Music in You. I mean, you think about it's a whole nother conversation. Just don't, if you've got something you want to do, go and do it. Don't die with it in you, because you don't get a second crack. Richard Hamilton, it's been a fascinating journey. I've loved hearing about all that you've done in your life, and really taken quite a bit from this one. So thank you so much. No, thank you. It's been great, Matt, and look forward to hearing it.